remember my very first car. It was a 1984 Saab 900 Turbo. I remember the first time I drove the car. I remember the first time I showed it to my friends. I remember going to the prom in that car. My mom cleaned it out for me and everything. Before I got my first car though, I had to learn how to drive, and I remember the car that I learned to drive on. I remember spending hours in the East Coweta High School parking lot, frustrated, struggling to learn to drive a stick shift. And I remember the day I got my driver's license and I had what I considered then real freedom. There are moments in our lives that we call defining moments, moments that change the course of our lives. I remember the first time I held hands with a girl. Didn't turn out great for me, but that's a story for another time. I remember my first kiss. I remember the first time I saw my wife. I remember very clearly the day I asked her to marry me. These were very defining moments. Moments that I'll always remember and will always mean something to me. And believe it or not, Christianity has its own defining moment. You see, you might think the church was started based on some of Jesus' teachings, or because a bunch of people wrote a bunch of books about God, or for some other reason. But the reason that we exist as a church, the reason that people call themselves Christians, is because of one moment in time, one event in history, the day Jesus rose from the dead. This whole series we've been talking about how faith in God starts. And if you remember, the first week, I told you that Jesus was the starting point for faith. And his resurrection from the dead was the event that started the Christian faith. It's what matters the most. It's what changed a group of scared followers into bold preachers who were willing to die for their faith. It's what caused Peter, a follower of Jesus who denied even knowing Jesus while Jesus was being put on trial, to saying these words about Jesus to the people who killed him. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross. It was Jesus' resurrection from the dead that gave Peter the confidence to say this. Even though he knew people may want to kill him because he said this, he still said it. And here's what matters to you. You need to figure out whether Jesus really is the Son of God, and whether he really did raise from the dead. This is the question that matters most, because if he did, then it changes everything in our world. I mean, think about it. If there really is a God who loves us so much that even when we do bad things, he wants to forgive us, and he sends his son to die to pay the price for our sin, and then he raises his son from the dead 3 days later, wouldn't you want to do what that God says? Wouldn't you want to know him? Another defining moment in my life was the day I chose to give my life to God, because I believed that Jesus was the Son of God and rose from the dead so that I could be free from my sin. When I believed that that was true, I decided to live my life for him. Let him call the shots, and my life hasn't been the same since. And the same could happen for you too. But you have to focus on the question that matters most. Is Jesus really the Son of God, and did he really rise from the dead? Talk about that in your groups, and I'll see you next week.